This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Watch the greenbacks tumble. Feel the sky crumble.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Smells like bliss in the studio. Here we go. Your dial is set correctly to USAPrepares.com. We're delighted you're here. We're broadcasting 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. There's a link to all of your instructors on the website, USAPREPARES.com. Podcasts are free. Converging threats are confronted daily by your instructors. I'm Vincent Finelli. Matt is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. Dr. Richard Allen Miller is with us. Welcome, Rick.
Good morning. Having a bad biorhythm day. Grounds in my coffee, and the song is not about me.
Well, let's see if we can fix that, Rick.
Well, it's not fixable. I'm going to break something.
Hey,
Thank
Rick?
you. Yes.
This afternoon, after I get off the air, I have an appointment. And I haven't done this in a long, long time. And the last time I did something like this, a guy called me up and he said, Vinny, listen, I think you'd be really good for this job. He wanted me to run a computer network for a county. And I said, and this was in Virginia, and I said, you're talking about like an employee, you mean? He said, yeah, you'd be great. And I said, well, I don't think I'd survive the interview. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, you'd ask me all kinds of questions, and, the board would ask me questions. And I'd have to respond with things like, well, what if I wanted to stay late, get there early, work on the weekends? Is the building open? What if I wanted a day off? Do I have to ask somebody for that? I mean, do you have to arrange those kinds of things in advance, or can you just do them on the spur of the moment? And these kinds of discussions don't fit well with an interview, right? Well, this afternoon I'm being interviewed by the president and chief executive officer of Laclede Electric Cooperative, because I'm running for the board, and this is where they officially get to meet the candidate for the board of directors. Now, the board of directors, we would be controlling what the company does at a very high level, and the CEOs serve at the pleasure of the board. So the president is going to be interviewing me to see if he likes me to be his boss.
Yeah. Stay tuned on that.
Hey, Rick, how do you think it's going to go?
I don't know, man.
Well, I'll report back on it. But anyway, I'm amused that I have the opportunity to.
Did you say that to him like that?
Would I?
Yes.
Sure, absolutely.
I think
I was thinking of
a great beginning. No, no. It's I've got a special little sign that you wear. It says "Troublemaker," and.
Well, seriously, I was thinking about, opening the discussion with something like, if he were to ask me, Mr. Finelli, why do you want to do this? And I could say to him, well, I've been thinking about this, and I believe that I'm your best hope for staying in this position. because I'm concerned about the power grid. I'm concerned about electric delivery, electrical service. And without it, let me see, how many employees we have? Well, none of them will have jobs if we don't do this right. So I'm your best hope. So, so I was thinking about saying something like that. Rick, and that brings to mind a stunt that I and another guy pulled back in 1980. I mentioned this once on the air. I was being interviewed as to who I am on Dr. Lorraine Hurley's show. But in 1980, April 1st was coming around. We were in March, and we were in Silicon Valley, California. I was a founder of a company with a couple other guys. We were manufacturing satellite communications equipment. And that was before the internet. And for our own amusement, we decided to write a press release. And we talked about this product that we made. It was called the TX Bus, TX-BUS. And back then, they talked about the SS100 bus and the SS50, and these were computer interface buses. And so we decided we would invent something that was non-existent, and we called it the TX Bus. So we wrote this press release, and we said that this was unveiled by V. Ilinef, which is Ilinef is Finelli spelled backwards. And we said another guy, and we unveiled this at the sanitary facilities of the Walter Reed Army Hospital, and surgeons could understand how to do this, and it talked all about this interface, this connection, if you will, to the human body. And it alleged, without really saying this, that this was an interface probably somewhere in your arm that you could plug this cable into, and it would reroute computer signals or route computer signals to the brain, and you would become the character of your choice in a movie. Now, you'd have to be stress tested in advance so that if you were a Rambo, for example, if Rambo had existed back then, I'm just using that as an example, that if you decided to be Rambo, that you could actually jump and run and, get shot and cut and sliced and survive, because the stress on you would be enormous as a participant in the movie. So you would be in the movie. It's not like you'd be watching the movie. You were in the movie. And the movie was real. At least that's what we alleged. And so we sent this out to the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and Popular Science, Popular Mechanics, to a whole bunch of publications. And it looked official. It was on our corporate letterhead. I mean, it really looked like we actually did it. But it had enough truth in it that people who were naive would believe it. And they did, Rick. It actually got published that we invented this advanced technology. It seemed so credible that people were calling us up, showing up at our corporate headquarters in California and throwing money at us. They wanted to buy stock in our company, and they wouldn't say why. And, initially we thought, what's up? What are these people doing here? Why are they all trying to buy into our company? And then we realized it was this joke that we pulled, weeks earlier about some product that did not exist, could not exist at that time. So and we never accepted any money because that would be fraud. And I was amused. I was really amused and kind of taken back. Like, what? Now, now what do we do? Well, here's the question I have for you. Has technology advanced to the point where 34 years later, today, is it possible to send signals either through an interface in a person's bioelectrical nervous system to the brain, or is this still fiction?
Wow. Well, we have always been working toward that transhuman relationship with marrying into a machine. And we originally called them cyborgs, and then robots or bots, cybots, and the concept. We were trying to do that in my laboratory back in the 70s. We had a rhesus monkey, had the brain plate pulled off, and a chip stuck right directly into the brain. And what we were trying to do is figure out how to interface with dendrites. And that was in the 70s. Now, here we are, 40 years later, and I've got pictures of what they call a biochip, but it's where they will grow certain kinds of nerve tissue onto a computer chip, which is basically, most people don't realize what a computer chip is really two alkali halide metals that are put face to face, and what happens is the interface between the two of them becomes a register for storage of information because of the way the interface between the one piece of metal does to the other. And what you want to do now is stimulate that with a current flow. You know, like the old diode concept where you had a selenium rectifier or something where all the current could run in one direction but not the other. We've gone way beyond that now to the point where we can, have. Do we have a biochip yet? No, we do not. However, we, back in the 70s, and this is not widely publicized, we had a metal chip that was so small you could put it in water and drink it, and it would be site selective. It would, because of the metals on it, determine where it would lodge in the body. And that was in the 70s. So I can't even imagine where we are today with that, except that there's a lot of people that would suggest that the geoengineering is to create and implant a bio API. That's what it's called, a API. It's a biological type interface between a metal and your brain. And so I don't know.
Well, Rick, the reason I asked is, back then, I thought it was really amusing, and we're just a bunch of young guys in the loft of a rented building, just entertaining ourselves, and it caught on. And I'll tell you what happened when we come back from this break. Dr. Richard Alan Miller is with us. RichardAlanMiller.com. RichardAlanMiller.com. So Rick, here's what happened. So we published this press release that we sent out to about a lot of magazines and newspapers all over the country. It got published, and they said that these two researchers unveiled this TX bus on April 1st in 1980. 10 years later, there was another publication, an industry publication from California. And this publication talked about great claims that failed to materialize into viable products. And they had the greatest claims in significance order. So the number one greatest claim that failed to materialize into a viable product was a product by Apple Computer called the Newton. And this was a notepad device that you kind of could carry around and write notes on. So it would be like a secretary in your pocket that you could just write notes on. That was the number one product that failed to materialize into a viable product. Number two.
Didn't they call those Palm Pilots?
Well, that was the beginning. Yeah, that's what it ultimately evolved into. Yes, the number two product that failed to materialize into a viable product was the TX bus. But the funny thing was, Apple actually had a product. It just didn't turn out to be viable. We didn't have a product, and it obviously didn't turn out to be viable. So I guess there's a bunch of threads through the story that make that are why I'm telling it. One is that just because you read something, and just because it's in print, And just because it's picked up by a major publication or 2 or 5 or 20 or 40 doesn't mean it's real. And there are single points to stories that seem to be able to develop legs. So, for example, one person on the internet can start a story, and then somebody across the country can read it and then repost it. And now that story appears to have 2 points. And then someone else can post it, and it can grow geometrically. And then it seems like it's real. And it may not be
They
real.
did that with a Clairol advertisement on you telling somebody. And then you tell somebody, and the whole thing snowballs.
Right. And that's actually what happened with the TX bus. And it was pure fiction.
Well, that's because they wanted to believe.
Well, they did.
That's what it's all about.
Rick, they did want to believe, and not only did they want to believe, they wanted to get rich. And they wanted to get rich on what they believed was the newest thing. And what fueled the dot-com bubble? The belief that the company actually had something. People were investing in companies. They had no idea what the companies did. Had no idea whatsoever. But yet someone told them about it, and they thought, well, if that guy knows it must be real. He bought into it, and she bought into it, and I might as well do it because they can't be dumb. Well, a lot of people lost a lot of money in the dot-com bubble. So I wanted to share that story about something that I did, and it was real in terms of what I did, but it was an imaginary product. Rick, when we talk, one of the things we need to talk about today is easy water. Maybe we can do that in the second hour. But let's talk about energy. And the United States government is beating up little countries all over the world. We're invading them, and we're saying that we want to make their country safe for democracy. We don't have a democracy here, so why would we even use that verbiage? But we go in there and we destroy their infrastructure. But it seems that all of these countries have 1 or 2 things in common. Either they have energy, or they want to get away from the U.S. Federal Reserve note as the reserve currency. They want to do one of those 2 things, so we go and beat them up. Now, energy is something that I'm wondering, is it somewhat finite, Rick, or is it infinite? What I mean by that is oil. Is oil really our last hope, or is there something better than oil for propelling cars and machines and so forth, tractors and over-the-road equipment? When we get back, can we talk about energy and what your thoughts are going forward? Is it finite? Is it renewable? Or what? Dr. Richard Allen Miller, and I'll be right back. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Rick, is energy renewable, or is it more finite? And the reason I'm asking is when I was in school.
Yeah, I've got an answer. Okay. I'd like to quote Albert Einstein.
Yeah.
In the universe, everything is energy. It is a relationship of space and time to what we call particles. And so health is an energy. The disease is a different kind of energy. Our thoughts are energy. Just by changing the nature of it, we can change the nature of energy just by changing its vibrational frequencies, wavelengths, that kind of thing. So it is, like consciousness, an all-pervasive sea of potential. And that's what energy really is. Now, taking it down into the physical plane, I sent you 2 links that I think you're going to want to post. I don't know. Are you familiar with Dave Hodges? Yeah. He has 2 articles out. The first one is on the communist Chinese takeover of all U.S. energy. Now, what does that mean? Well, remember the Bundy Ranch and the Chinese wanting to put those big solar arrays out there in the desert where the turtles were?
Yes.
And okay, well,
Yes.
that was Harry Reid. Remember, and his son. I talked to you about that. That was all about the United States giving to China, buying them off for the debt that we owe to them. Taking control of our power. In the next 20 years, presuming we're not glowing in the dark, etc., there is most likely all transportation in North America will be handled by the Chinese. The second article that I sent to you that I thought was, that's a fact, that will be the way it plays. And that's what they're doing. And right now, there is trying to use water as a weapon. Now, the drought that we're currently enjoying in California, what that's literally going to do, there are up here in southern Oregon wells now, domestic wells that are dry. This is in the first weeks of June, and there's no water. Now, in California, what's going to happen? There are forest fires everywhere. We got one in Bend, that's 3.5 hours from May, 4 hours. And the smoke is, particulate is in the air here. It was a 6,400-acre brush fire on the side of a mountain. And what's happening is that we are becoming a desert. And California this summer will default on agriculture. It is no longer an agricultural state because it does not have water. Most of the water that California has been using has come from Colorado. And now that's closed doors. And what will happen is produce will become less available and double in price. And that's what's happening next. And with that, they're now turning water into a weapon. They would like to privatize water, just like they would transportation. And those two things you have equated with energy and what the potential is. What you have to do to defend yourself in this whole thing is to revision who you are and what is important to you. Now, as transportation, do you run around the world a lot, or you run around your farm a lot? Why not have your own energy on site? That's the way your grandfather did it. And before there was Henry Ford, and when there was Henry Ford, the first Henry Ford used alcohol. There it is. You see, you have been distracted by images of a new car, and everybody I know is broke right now, has many, many things. It's like a prison with storage units and the rest of it on things you don't need and you don't use. And you are still consuming. And I have another link with Project Avalon that I'm working with that is suggesting you cannot buy your way into prosperity. It doesn't work that way. And so trying to keep up with the Joneses has been a crazy sleight of hand. How's that one for something to chew about what energy is and is not? Energy should be free to everyone, just like the air you breathe and the water you drink. And that was Chief Sealth in 1857 when he said, how can man own the air he breathes? How can he own the land he lives on? We're caretakers, and we have missed the whole concept of tenant-landlord acts and the ability to ownership by absentee ownership, that kind of craziness where let's go ahead and log it. I don't care what other people think. It's a type of, we need a change in everything. And so there will be a revolution, another American revolution. There will be. And it's interesting, even though we're worse off than Mexico in many, many ways. Actually, in fact, I see us, everyone in the world is looking, even in Europe, they are watching to see what we're going to do because we're the leaders. And we always were, and now we're faltering because of complacency, ignorance, and being ill-informed. And what you need to do is, the answers are not out there. I've got this thing on Project Avalon. The title of this little string says, "Why Some Americans Deserve the Troubles Now Flowing to Them." And the first thing, it starts off with shopping center space per capita, and the way it retails shopping space, and the way there's an energy. Mm-hmm. How's this working for you, Vincent? Are you getting the bigger picture? That's the problem. We get distracted with the basics like rent, and we've missed the fact that how can someone own something like that? How does that work when you're only here, 80 years, 85 years? Pass it down into families, subdivide it down into little things, have China select the power to feed us, and off we become as a third world country with other countries like China that will be running all of our transportation for sure on that level. Absolutely, probably. Look, all the cars. Look at what's happening. Look what's happening. And look at all the cars that are brand new that are not being sold. No one's buying them. Why?
Well, because they can't afford them, for one thing.
Well, what's that mean?
Rick,
what was this thing? You cannot buy your way into prosperity. You have to
You're
earn
absolutely
it.
Right.
Remember I told you money was a theatrical prop. What's real is your labor.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. Rick, I've got a little scenario to share with you, or a little story. I bought a generator, a military surplus generator that I'm installing at the farm, and I want to install it in a garage to keep it protected, and I wanted to build an exhaust system. This thing is made to run a military camp. It's a 5 kilowatt generator. It's a 2-cylinder diesel, and it's a really, really neat generator, but it's pretty loud. So I put it in the garage. I got the front end loader, and I picked it up. It's pretty darn heavy. This thing is the size of a refrigerator, and I put it. My son and I put it in the garage, and I'm fabricating an exhaust system, an automotive exhaust system, to silence the sound of this generator and send the exhaust outside. So there's about 10 feet of exhaust pipe that has lots of bends in it and a muffler and so forth. And so to adapt this generator, I needed to buy some pipe. And I'm talking about National Pipe threaded pipe, the kind that used to be used for drains in houses in America back in the 1950s. It's no longer being used for that. It's too expensive. Well, we used to make these fittings in the United States. We had little foundries, and we would thread the pipe and cast it and so forth. And it was great. Well, no longer. The pipe now comes from China. It costs way, many times more than it used to, and it still comes from China. Well, here's the point. So I use, we'll call it dollars, for example. I use dollars to buy these couple of pieces of pipe, which are way, more expensive than they used to be. The money or the dollars that I use go to the store. The store pays the Chinese for the items that I purchased, and now the Chinese have our dollars from all of us. Now, what in the heck are the Chinese going to do with dollars? What can they buy from the United States? Seriously, what can they possibly buy? We don't make a darn thing except maybe some very large earth-moving equipment by Caterpillar and Terex, T-E-R-E-X. Other than that, I can't think of anything that they would want to buy from us. So what are they going to do? Well, that would be businesses. They'd buy businesses. They'd be buying farms, and they'd be buying properties. What else could they possibly buy from us?
Utilities.
The
day to day, every day, you need it. Water.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. That's what they're doing right now. That's what the Bundy Ranch thing was really all about. I sent you the link that shows the two senators that were involved. Basically, I don't know about Arizona and New Mexico and Illinois. I am here in Oregon, and right now I'm going to say, watch what happens when Texas secedes from the Union and has their own grid.
There you go. Dr. Richard Alan Miller and I will be right back after these few short commercial announcements. Richard, ALAN, Miller.com. We'll be right back. Rick, you know, you've been to the farm, and I've mentioned many times that I'm concerned about the weather, the violent weather extremes here. It's been raining every day except yesterday and one other day for about a month.
Raining now, huh?
It's still... Well, it looks like it's going to rain any minute, and it looks like it... we're having trouble getting our hay cut, and we haven't done it yet, and hardly anybody else has either. But so we're building this barn, and I bought a used barn from Arkansas, and I hauled it up here in pieces and on our gooseneck trailer, and we're excavating now to put in the footer and grade the ground where we're going to put in this barn. And there's two pieces of equipment that we needed. That we need a large piece of Caterpillar equipment, and that's on site. That's American made. But the other piece of equipment that's doing most of the work is a Takeuchi. It's an Asian piece of gear on it. It's got a rubber track. It's kind of like a bulldozer, but it has a rubber track. This thing is absolutely incredible. It weighs about, I guess about 10,000 pounds. It's a really, about 12,000 pounds. It's a really impressive piece of gear. And here's the point I'm trying to make. We may think that we're the biggest and the best and, have the best engineering and, America's where it's at. Well, I'm here to tell you that I'm impressed with products from other countries that blow the doors off us in terms of cost effectiveness. And this Takeuchi device seems to be one of those really cool products that's built in Asia. I mean, if you look at the durability, you drive a Datsun, right? A Datsun 260Z from the 1970s,
280.
Right?
Yeah.
280Z, okay.
Yeah.
From the 70s, right?
76, yeah.
Yeah. And wasn't that a marvel of engineering back then? That's an inline six-cylinder.
It was the best design, even over Porsche, which at that time, 911, was only, 914, was only, it was 10 times the cost, and the Datsun outperformed it. Everything. The better build, had twin outrigger frames. You could hit it sideways at 40 miles an hour and walk away.
Yeah. I looked very carefully at that design back when it was two models back, when they started out with the 240Z, then for a very short time.
And then 260s weren't. That 1 year, the 1976, the 280Z, is possibly one of the best designed sports cars in the world. There are other cars that are better designed for what they do. Even Mercedes didn't come close in terms of rack and pinion and the way it cornered. The way the spoiler held it to the ground didn't even start to turn on until it was at 100 miles an hour. My top end was 168. That's brake horsepower to cross-sectional frontal area. I had it at Pacific Raceways. The car was extremely well designed, but they don't do that anymore because the whole thing now, energy, we'll keep coming back to the concept of energy, employs people as support industries to make batteries. You can set your clock to watch to how when a battery's going to wear out. I mean, we're talking about engineered down to the point where, and to obsolescence. That's why things are made with plastic, just like that polymer that's in bioengineering, geoengineering. Plastic is a scourge. That was DuPont, by the way. DuPont was the one that came up with plastic. And you'll notice you use it in everything. Everything is overpackaged. We have refuge piles, deep, big piles. Someday might turn into crude. I don't know. I don't know how that works. I have ideas that I I've never seen anything break down in the 100 years I've been around.
Rick, I'm glad you mentioned overpackaging, because that was one of the things I have on my list to talk with you about. So in the pursuit of building this exhaust system, fabricating an exhaust system for the generator, I bought some parts, and I mentioned that I bought some pipe fittings. But I want to talk to you about packaging and some of the other products that I bought locally. And very unusual what I'm about to say. So let's talk about that on the other side of the top of the hour news. We're talking about being on the farm, and actually you're going to hear about shopping locally and why it may make sense. Dr. Richard Alan Miller is with us. I'm Vin Finelli. This is USAPrepares.com. We'll be right back. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, hour number 2 of USAPrepares.com with Dr. Richard Alan Miller. You know, we just heard that Ted Cruz renounced his citizenship. Now, here are the qualifications for the office of President of the United States of America. You must be a natural-born citizen, or a citizen of the United States. And you must be 35 years of age or older, and be a resident 14 years within the United States. Now, Ted Cruz was born in Calgary, Alberta, of an American mother and a Cuban father. He renounced his citizenship. I guess, since Barry wasn't born here and he's president, I guess anything goes. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Rick, I was telling the story about this exhaust system I'm building for the generator in the garage. And it's a detached garage, separate from the farmhouse. And I'm running underground cable to a transfer switch at the farmhouse, so I can run the entire farm on this one generator. And I'm fabricating this exhaust system. I did the drawings and so forth, and I went to a local muffler and automotive repair shop to have the parts made. So I have about 8 pieces of pipe in 90-degree angles and other angles, and we took pipe that was straight pipe, 7.5 feet long, 2 of those, cut them, bent them, and I bought the muffler clamps at the same place. And here's the whole point. We're talking about overpackaging. None of the pipe came in a package. It was just off the rack, and it's shipped in a bundle, just tied together with a piece of wire at each end. And that's the entire shipping configuration. So there's no boxes that this came in. There's no plastic wrapping around them. It's just pipe. A bundle of pipe that the shop bought, and they just put it in a rack. And then the muffler clamps were just loose. They were not in boxes. They were loose. So there's no packaging there. The only thing that came in a box was the muffler itself. That, I think, is really the way it should be. If we could buy parts like that without the excessive packaging. What do you think?
Well, I think it's a distorted idea of human nature when it's sold. People are treated as the market. And what they're doing is using raw materials in a very frivolous way that take and make things more expensive. It gets more hands in the cookie jar. It's, because then there's the need for garbage and pickup. The whole thing, that's what garbage is all about. Mostly removing, not your compost, but the things you can't burn and you don't want to bury.
Rick, if you look at the old farms around Missouri, and even farms on the East Coast, if you could find one that's been in a family for a long time, they had like a dump area. And what they would do is they would, if there were cans, they'd put the cans in this pile, and eventually they would rust and decompose. The things that would not would be glass products, but there weren't a lot of glass products because milk came in reusable milk bottles. If people bought soda, they came in reusable soda bottles, and you would return them and for deposit. So people didn't throw things that were useful out, and there really was no excessive packaging. But when we got into
they didn't
marketing,
throw them in the street either, like they do now either.
Right.
It's the whole thing about being a consumer needs to be, the big picture needs to be revisioned and rethought, because I saw this graph yesterday. I couldn't find it. I was trying to find it. That showed about the petrodollar and Russia in depositing so many billions of dollars into U.S. banks, in January and February. But in March, they started pulling. And watch what's going to happen in the next month with all of our money and banks. It's unbelievable. I have this other website I was looking at. This is information that I just don't think about in terms of national debt and how long it would take to just how many cars, how many this, how many that it would require to cover that debt. Now, how is that going to work when China comes in and starts saying that they want to sell you your electrical and gas?
You're absolutely right, Rick. We've got Sherry from Kansas. Sherry, you're on with Dr. Richard Allen Miller and me, Vin Finelli.
Good morning, fellas.
Good morning.
Dr. Miller, I've got David Bloom's book on alcohol can be a gas.
You bet. You bet.
Yeah, have you got that one?
Yeah, Santa Cruz. He's out of Santa Cruz, yes.
Yeah, he talks about the different things you can use to make alcohol, and I was Jerusalem artichokes grow around here wild.
Yeah, that's the studies there. Jerusalem artichokes, corn. They're both extremely hard on your A and in some cases B horizon, mostly A horizon. You just decimate the soil. What you want is a sugar source that goes down into C horizon. And that one, the study I did was comfrey. And we did that for Japan, for Osaka. And what the taproot goes down 18 feet. It's making topsoil, not, the biomass yield is what you're looking for per acre. And comfrey is higher than Jerusalem artichoke or corn in terms of biomass yield. And it's taproot. The only thing that'll kill it is hogs and no water. And so that's the one I'm using, is comfrey. It's a lot of glop. It has indole, so it will have a tendency to rot. It doesn't dry in the sun like alfalfa might, and but you can use comfrey in a big still with a slurry. And Bloom has the whole format there on how to do it simply with a couple of old 55-gallon drums.
Yeah, now what I find is interesting is what he has to say about cattails. And,
that's interesting. Yeah, well, cattails is, there you go, natural resources. Look around. What's the weed kudzu, in the South, whatever. That's what is your power source for energy. And that's the way you should look at it in terms of what does the environment want you to use.
Yeah, and
that's being indigenous. Look around, see what your natural resources are in that regard. Some could be a poplar. Right now, they're using poplar here on the West Coast as a virgin white paper, but hemp is even better. And Chuck Walters and I even wrote a book unpublished on that in terms of biomass yields and how to make a virgin white for paper. So,
you say that's unpublished?
No, it hasn't. I got a whole stack of them. That's why I'm looking for a patron. I have 10 books right now ready to go to press. I can't do them because it's like $5,000 a book. To go to Lightning Source or whatever like that. But I have 10 more. I have 2 more versions of the encyclopedia ready to go. Things like the comfrey that I talked about. I have a whole monograph on that, detailed. How to grow it, how to take it off the ground, etc. That was the big problem with comfrey, is that what you do is you put a wilt on it, and then you have to remove it from the field and run it through a special kind of dryer system. We tried microwave and other things like that as well, like they're doing lumber now. Up in University of British Columbia, they use microwave as their drying kilns. Rather than
wouldn't that kind of destroy the food value for your mash?
No, you're going for it. You're going. It's not about the fiber. You're after the sugars. You're after the sugars. Yeah, you can burn up the fiber. Who cares? Yeah.
Well, that's part of what he talks about in the book is the secondary products from this. But
that's right, and that's again, I like Bloom and his ideas because that's almost like not permaculture, but where you have relationships of different stories of your crops in their relationship one to another. Like, you know, if you have a lot of deciduous trees, then you have shade and and biomass yield that falls, etc.
Now, have you looked into methane digestion?
Well, yeah. You mean like in what is that Road Warrior movie, Thunderdome? Yeah, where you use hogs. Methane has always been another source, especially on the farm, with composting and a lot of manures and things like that. When you have that kind of a resource base, like a dairy, then of course methane is absolutely doable.
You know, in Bloom's book, Vince, he's got an idea where, for like, if you lived around a small town and have so many acres with about 3 or 4 different crops that can be used to make alcohol, and they come available at different times, so
right,
that you
so
always
that you have a 4-season kind of harvesting, or except for winter. Depends on where you're living. Tropical Hawaii is quite different than Arctic Alaska in terms of your seasons and what's available. Actually, up in Alaska, you can use algae that grows out in the water. And so, that's the whole concept of what they're doing now is trying to use algae.
Well, some would say that that's why they're trying to run everybody off the coast.
There you go.
Hey, but
Sherry, did you have some more? Did you want to hold through the break?
The thing about cattails is you can use them to
Sherry,
clean up the...
we're going into a break. Would you like to hold through the break or what?
Yes, please.
Okay. Sherry's with us. Dr. Richard Allen Miller. I'm Vin Finelli. This is USAPrepares.com. Weather manipulation, in my opinion, is extremely serious. We're looking at crop failures in California. Right here at the farm, I'm unable to bale hay. I've said it over and over and over. I'm not the only one who can't bale hay because it's so damp. And that means that at this point, we don't have any feed for the cows over the winter. And there are construction delays all over because of the rain. Our barn construction is delayed over a month right now because of the nonstop rain. So what does that mean to we the people? Well, I would say expect higher food prices. I would also submit to you that as the temperature keeps rising, we will have more electrical related problems at an increasing rate. Now, electronics like to operate at cool temperatures. I'm not saying freezing, but electronics like to operate at cool temperatures. They don't like it really hot. As a matter of fact, if you look at some of the electronics you have, there are heat sinks on a lot of the components to remove the heat from the electrical components. So as the temperature surrounding those devices increases, the ability to shed the heat from them becomes more and more difficult, and the failures become more and more prevalent. So I wanted to share that with you, that if you have a computer, I suggest you vacuum it out if you can, and remove any dust that's on the radiating surfaces within your computer case to help your computer run cooler, therefore last longer and not succumb to heat-related failures. So we're talking about crop failures in California. We're talking about food prices increasing. And we're on with Dr. Richard Allen Miller and Sherry Rick. Do you want to comment on what I just said before Sherry continues?
You're absolutely correct. Like we talked about last week, about that NASA document that talks about, the future of man and how it's all going because of our different researches. The United States is becoming like Mexico, only even less so. And China is moving in a totally different kind of colonization, if you will.
Yeah.
Right now, China owns 50% of Grants Pass, Oregon. I'm wondering, in terms of, just things in your house and where they came from, how much of that came from China?
Well, I'm looking around, Rick, and a lot of things that I have in our home are old antiques and so forth.
That's the cool part, isn't it? They seem to last forever. They don't wear out. They don't biodegrade.
But if you look at the keyboards I have in front of me and the electronics that I have in front of me, almost all of it is from Asia. Literally.
Yeah. Or
it's
India.
outrageous.
Yeah.
Sherry, back to you.
Rick, that's scary. Did you say 50%?
50% in regard to
On
Grants
the...
Pass.
50% ownership? Yes, I did.
Because
yes, that's true.
Isn't that area you live in, aren't there a lot of, I know I get some herbs from a company that's in Grants Pass.
Pacific Botanicals, some of the others like that, or Herb Farm. Yeah, but there's a lot of big companies here. Yes, but the land, like Walmart, and by the way, that's the wonderful part. Even our Walmart is starting to fail. You're going to see that happen.
Well, are they restricting the water by owning all this land? Is there like...
No, I don't think it's going to work like that exactly. But there is a move, like, for example, the guy in Medford is in jail right now, still today, for collecting his own rainwater.
Oh, the guy that for the ponds, built some ponds?
Yes. Well, he was collecting it for his drinking water and things, and they arrested him. They tried him. They convicted him and stuck him in jail. He was stealing water from the state of Oregon.
Yeah, I heard Doreen Hannes on the radio the other day, Vince, talking about something that I think it's the EPA is trying to do when they couldn't get the...
I just posted that on Facebook. Good work, girl. You're right on it. Yes, EPA is closing down a bunch of power plants, and that's going to affect our crops and crop costs for production this year. You're going to see crops double because of what EPA just did. Yes.
Yeah, I'll hang up. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Thanks, Sherry. Doreen Hannes is a neighbor of ours right here in Missouri, and met her several times. Interesting lady. We'll be right back. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us, the real Fox Mulder of the X-Files. Rick, fourth phase of water. Let's talk about that, and let's share that knowledge you have with our class.
Well, I am only just now beginning to research it because it's, Jerry Pollack and his book out, The Fourth Phase of Water. I'm experimenting with this. Water has 18 phases. That's why it has structure to it. We have H2O, we have H709 with a free radical ion, that's where there will be like 3 water molecules that will cluster as a group, and then an ion will be allowed to roam around. That has to do with the covalent bonding. It has the ability to store things. When you look at water, it's hydrogen is number 1 and oxygen is number 8. Now, those are forms of molecule. The first of any molecules we're aware of that has a dipole moment. It is the smallest molecule known with a dipole moment. And so it has been related to life. And what life is the structure of water. That's where now they're trying to suggest things about consciousness as well. We know that water coming out of the ground is at 7.0. pH is 7.0, and somehow that is an acidic or alkaline. It's balanced. But we know that water, in order to do digestion, needs to be slightly alkaline at 8.4. Or the water has to be pulled from bone marrow to balance stomach acids and other kinds of things going on so that you maintain a generally base or neutral pH in your body, so you don't have molds and all kinds of things growing all over the place out of control. And that's the first level of approaching water, your pH. Once you've got that idea of pH and how important it is, you realize that drinking water out of a plastic bottle is not healthy because that water and plastic will cause the pH to raise to what we call 6.8. It's almost very lightly acidic. And that has to do with the way the water touches an object, in this case, plastic. And plastic will allow certain kinds of light bands to come in that hit the water and structure it so that it has very little surface tension. It's almost flat to the point. And so they'll try to carbonate to give you a sense of, carbonation in it, and that is just basically more toxin, not having to do with pH as much as it does other things. Carbon dioxide. Okay, now with that, you're starting to get an idea that maybe your selection of water is more important than your selection of food. And, you're talking about non-GMO and it's certified organic. I grew this myself. How about the water you're drinking? I'm beginning to believe that today there is water is what causes health or not. And so my concern with geoengineering was that what they're doing, at least in one of the applications, is a desiccant that pulls water out of the atmosphere and holds it in stasis in this little polymer that form these weird artificial clouds. What are they doing it for? There's a lot of different explanations. They're all different agencies. So that means there goes one right now. You'll notice that the chemtrails today, you won't see them because of the rain. They can't do it when it's raining because what that particulate is up there, and it will hold up there until it rains or snows and comes to the ground. That also now is in your water, your food, and your body. You can put a swab in your mouth, and you can look under a microscope, and there it is. Now, what that's doing is the same thing it's doing up in the sky. It's actually causing a dehydration of your cell on a quantum mechanical level that is related to health. And I think almost all the different maladies that we experience all start first with the water that's in our body. And if you want to get healthy, you readdress that part of your body in terms of what you're actually consuming. And you don't drink fruit juice to get your water. You should be drinking water. And most people don't. And so most people are dehydrated, and that's what's going to lead to cancer. Now,
Rick,
do you have questions? I mean, I don't know where to go with this. There's so much in it. I'm getting the sense of it. Okay, different kinds of structures to it, like hydrogen peroxide, H2O2. H2O2 is kind of like water with some extreme activation of oxygen as an extra oxygen molecule, or an extra hydrogen molecule that causes it to be more caustic. It will actually go in and erode things better than water will, even. And so that's considered a structure of water. Hydrogen peroxide is related. It's H2O2. Then there are a series of other things. You put deuterium in water, heavy water, isotope, and it sets up the way the rest of the water behaves around it as like we do with stars. And so at this juncture, there's math out on it. I can talk about easy water. I'm not even sure what easy water is yet. What basically the easy water part that they're talking about now has to do with when a submarine or a torpedo goes through the water. What will happen is it creates a cavitation or ball behind it that follows the submarine as a unique structure of water in a ball. And that has led to studies at MIT on cold fusion. And the way cold fusion works, where basically if you look quantum mechanically at the cavitation ball that's happening, that's when you drop a water molecule into a pool, and it pops back up with a ball in the air. That ball in the air has a unique structure to it. And that's what we're now studying in terms of how we might use that to rehydrate the body. I have sent you some stuff on Jeff's site that I've been working with. He sent me some easy water, which is called H3O2. How do they know it's H3O2? They're trying to measure using optics and variation in optics. And there's a group out there that are doing a thing called the intentionality experiment, where you, like a moto, where you put your thoughts into the water. I noticed that the Catholic Church does that to kill vampires, and I know that when I'm over at your home, we sat around and said grace when we ate our food. You know, that is how we now believe structuring water occurs, because we are trying to relate consciousness and intentionality to the structuring in water. And they're trying to prove it, you know, with different experiments that they're doing now. It's interesting. And there is something to it. That's why I'm not just dismissing it. I'm suggesting something important may be going on here. Dr. Jerry Pollack, who wrote that book, The Fourth Phase of Water, and the metaphor I could use what a structure is diamond and graphite are identically the same chemicals, but they're structured differently. Now, water is the same thing, only it's much, much smaller. And when I say orders of magnitude, it's a very small molecule. It means it's into anything. It's everywhere. And so what's going on, we don't know. The concept of psyche and how you put thought in creating our reality into matter, that's this next century's fertile ground. That's where everybody is going now. How and what models are going to be used, I haven't got a clue. Stay tuned. I want to believe. Mm-hmm. You know, I
want to
intuitively sense there's something important here. And right now, if you want to do something, I think the first thing you do is rehydrate yourself as best as you can. Start over drinking water. Watch what happens to your health. Over drinking. You're not comfortable. You're forcing it on yourself.
Yeah.
Get into that habit.
Dr. Jerry Pollack's going to be on with us next Tuesday at 10 o'clock right
so
here.
Pleased. You'll like Jerry. Jerry was the guy that hired me. When Boeing had 50,000 scientists that hit the street in one day, Jerry hired me, military. I didn't work for Jerry. I worked under him. I had higher security clearances, so I worked around the hall down in where they call the boys from Brazil. And but Jerry was my lead. That means when I needed something like a Bridgeport mill, Jerry would get one for me.
Well, I talked to him, and he's a really brilliant man. I'm really looking forward to having him on the air as our newest instructor.
I was reading this one string, and they said, Jerry Pollack is a doting old professor who has outlived his tenureship. I couldn't believe it.
Well, I was really impressed.
And because Jerry's a professor emeritus at the University of Washington School of Anesthesiology. That's higher than Hammeroff. And anesthesiology and the University of Washington is, in terms of toys, sixth in the nation. That's where it all happens, right there at the UW. And Jerry's in the fray at the highest levels in medicine. Brain surgery is below anesthesiology, just for the record. And so, rigor and disciplines and out-of-the-box thinking. That's why these people are calling him outliving his tenureship, is because they can't get it.
Rick, we're going into a break. Susan from Arkansas, you're up next. And Rick, I wanted to share with you that, it's been raining for every day except for 2 in the last month or so here at the farm. But here's what I noticed. Yesterday, when the rain stopped, the grass started to die. The grass started to die because it couldn't take the ultraviolet waves. We'll be right back. I just got off the phone with Judy Dollarhide of Dollar Value Computers during the break, and she's going to bring a copy of Dane Wigington's Geoengineering DVD. That's what we're going to show on Monday at Ziggy's at the USA Prepares Monday night meetup. Dane Wigington's DVD. It's absolutely brilliant about geoengineering and the collapse that can result. And Dane has agreed to be available live via teleseminar for a question and answer session right after we watch the video on Monday. So for those of you who are in the area at Springfield, Missouri, if you'd like to come, Ziggy's Sunshine in Glenstone, 5:30 is when we start setting up. We'll watch the video starting at 6, and Dane Wigington will be live with us via teleseminar to answer all of our questions. Susan from Arkansas, thank you so much for waiting so patiently to be on with Dr. Richard Allen Miller and me at USA Prepares.
I'm sorry I called in so late because I know you don't have much time.
Could you speak up just a little bit, please?
Oh,
could you speak
there
up a little
were a couple of things that I wanted to mention that we don't have time today, but I was curious, is there a way we can obtain some of that easy water that Richard is talking about?
Yes, I can. I've given Vincent a header on Jeff Harvey's site where they're manufacturing it. There are others. I'm experimenting right now with Jeff Harvey's product to see what it does or not. It's pretty interesting. It's created with microwave. So and Vincent has that website and phone number contact.
Okay, marvelous.
I'll be posting that.
And the other thing I was going to say was what you were saying about grace before a meal. I have felt that for years, that the whole purpose of grace was to harmonize the molecules of the food with the body.
Well, that's why the Amish, for example, don't even say anything. What the Amish grace is, where you look into each person's eyes and move to the next person, and when that's grace. That's Amish. I'm a Quaker. Excuse me. That's the way we did it when I was a Quaker.
I know
you don't say anything. You just give thanks by looking to each person in the eye.
I know they're very
that
silent.
in itself structures everything.
Mm-hmm. And
that's fundamental, by the way.
And what were you saying about the grass dying? When it rains here, and it has been, I'm probably 100 some odd miles from Vince. And it amazes me how quickly it dries up.
That's what I'm
you
saying.
might talk to Jerry Pollack about the structure of that water that's coming down and how it might be so altered, like a microwave band, that the plant does not recognize it as water and can't use it. That's a very common experiment. Microwaving water, tap water. You feed it to 2 plants, and what happens next?
Oh, my goodness. Thank you. And at another point, I want to tell you what happened when I was forced to go to the hospital. What an experience. That really, what happens to you, they have control of.
Yeah, isn't that creepy?
Oh.
Especially when you realize you're a commodity.
Oh, piece of meat. I mean, it was amazing. And I just kept resisting, and eventually they were happy to see me go. I just kept it
We have a
up.
low water bridge. Did I lose? Boy.
No, you didn't lose me.
Oh, go ahead.
Basically, that's how you get rid of a witch. You cross running water. They can't track you.
Are you saying something here, Richard?
I'm just kidding. That is an old witchcraft tale. If you have a witch on your trail, you just cross running water, and they psychically can't find you.
Oh, how
Wonder
neat.
what that all means metaphorically.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be interesting to find out. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, I got knocked off the air about 3 times in the last 3 minutes. Dr. Richard Allen Miller, thanks so much for being with us. Susan, thanks so much for being with us. Please call in again, Susan, and we'll talk more about water. Class, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.